Today on the show, our very final World Cup preview. We've done 7 in 7 days now, David. So congrats on that. However, instead of ending on a high note, we are talking about the depressing realities, the political realities of this here World Cup, thanks to FIFA and the American government and various other parties, but mostly those two. It just simply cannot be ignored at this point, and was part of our plan anyway, but things have developed to the point where we needed to push it to the end of our cycle instead of yesterday, just to collect all the information as it comes in. So that's all coming up after the break. It's a fun one, guys. Yay.
Politics.
Live from San Jose, California, and Brooklyn, New York, home of the Brooklyn Nets. It's the Any Given Thursday podcast, where we're talking, as mentioned up top, about FIFA, Donald Trump, not at the Knicks game last night, but at, just in general in the world, and policies and administrative, platforms and follow-throughs and etc. How are you feeling about that, David? Are you super excited? Is this the little podcast you've always wanted to do when we started this 4 years ago?
I love getting political. You know me.
We're
unafraid to say something controversial.
We're like, let's start a podcast about the conference league. And now we're just how it is these days. Everything comes back to the same place. But we don't want to be the podcast that completely ignores all the goings on in the community, and there's simply too much bullshit to look past it and just enjoy the footy, which we will as well. But all things have to have their place here, and we've been sitting around for the last couple of days, sort of rather than recording this early, just collecting the new insane things that are happening. People being detained at airports for 8 hours. African referees being banned from entering the country whatsoever. Obviously what's going on with the Iranian team, that's all going to be covered in a moment. But first, David, we thought we might start with some slightly more enjoyable things in this sphere to kind of lubricate you for the rough stuff. So let's talk about English fans and shit on them. That sounds like fun, right?
We do that on the podcast all the time anyway. So.
You especially. Don't row me into this.
It's one of my favorite subjects to talk about.
Whose Portugal kit do you have on, by the way?
I don't know which year it is. It's unnumbered, so it's just the base jersey.
Mm-hmm.
But
it's a nice one.
Thank you. I've been trying to break out some of the national team jerseys I have for for these episodes, and I'm going to try.
I don't have many.
Some more of them throughout. Yeah, I can't wear my Italy jersey too often during this, unfortunately.
You don't want to get roasted? I'm not a person that can... I have a hard time wearing other jerseys of teams I don't actually support. Like, I find that emotionally challenging. So I pretty much have a closet full of orange Holland jerseys and nothing else.
Yeah.
Internationally speaking.
I like some of the artistic approach to some of the jerseys.
Oh, I agree.
So I have some that are teams that I have no affiliation for, but I rarely pull them out. But I figured recording World Cup content is the best time to do so.
Yeah. I agree. I'm jealous. I mean, not that I would never be wearing a Portugal shirt, but I appreciate that you are. And I appreciate it's one that highlights the green, because nothing pisses me off more than a Portugal jersey that strips away the green. They should always have green shorts on. Always. Fuck you. All right. I'm not sure I can say that on YouTube. I don't care.
No, we will get demonetized of the 5 cents that we're going to earn on on this show.
All right. Let's talk about some of the England and international fan situation where, like, even before we get into the political stuff, obviously we have a different cultural atmosphere here, a different, consumption diet of the sport, and with different geography, different weather. There's a lot of different stuff about coming to America and hosting a World Cup on an entire fucking continent with tons of space in between, lots of travel, and it seems like some visiting fans who are taking to it differently, or perhaps acclimatizing in different ways. Is that a fair way to lead you in here, David?
Yeah, I think that's a fair analysis of the situation. You have some fans who are coming in trying to embrace and understand American culture, others who are coming in and saying we want it to be like every other World Cup prior to 2018. I'll say that's kind of like the dividing line for when it's become
when it was pure.
More. Yeah, pure is a good way to say
purer.
it.
I mean, FIFA was never pure.
No, even going back to the second World Cup was hosted in a unabashedly fascist country as a way to promote their regime. So,
indeed,
yeah, it's never been the purest sporting event, but
no.
There's some fans who are coming in trying to experience American culture. Others who are saying this is about soccer or football. Ooh, that's a talking point right there.
That's a close one.
We're going to come in and say everything about this country's wrong. They shouldn't be hosting it. And while they're right that we should not be hosting the World Cup, it's for reasons that we'll discuss later, not for reasons like our stadiums are kind of boring. Not for reasons like snakes exist in the American Southwest in Mexico. People freaking out about the Swiss team being like, hey, don't go into this forest part next to our training center because there's rattlesnakes. Like, yeah, there's rattlesnakes. They rattle to let you know that they're there. So they're pretty easy to avoid. And it's not, I don't think the Swiss team actually thinks it's a big deal, or they would have chosen a location more downtown in San Diego, a massive city where there's plenty of training facilities. They didn't have to go to this location. So I'm sure they don't care. But a lot of fans online seem to think it's like this major issue that if you step outside of the training facility, you'll get bit by a rattlesnake. It's very easy to avoid.
This is not fact. I'm just going to preface with that. But the San Diego metro area is basically the same size of population as the entire country of Switzerland. So they had options.
Yeah.
They had all of Southern California to choose from. They had a lot of options. Let's chill. And also that everyone's like, oh, well, look at Spain training at like a high school in Chattanooga. Have you seen this place? It's like a fucking palace. It's not like, like a turf field like in the suburbs of of Tennessee. It's like a nice place. It's a nice facility in the woods, secluded, which is assume why they chose it, to have a limited distraction.
Why they would choose Chattanooga, Tennessee, and not some place maybe a little closer to where their games will be, but that's a question for the Spanish FA, not for the World Cup team putting it together.
They're not the one I have the most questions for in that respect, because Czechia I think is based in New Jersey, and their games are all on the West Coast, including some of them at altitude in Guadalajara, and then another in LA, I think. So what the hell are they doing in New Jersey? That's not going to help.
Yeah.
That's the longest flight you could take in North America. That's insane.
And it does, it's a huge World Cup geographically, which is
we've
an issue.
Talked about this before. It's very stupid, and I don't know how you really avoid it if you're doing the entirety of like even just the United States, like unless you regionalize it, which would inevitably piss huge parts of the country off. It's somewhat unavoidable in some ways, but in other ways they haven't exactly made the most of it within those confines either. So by continuing to expand it to Mexico and Canada, et cetera, et cetera.
And FIFA has made this big public statement multiple times about how they plan to be carbon neutral by 2040. They're looking to reduce their CO2 footprint all the time. And then this is going to be it's going to be about 90% more CO2 emission just from flights at this World Cup than the CO2 emission at all previous World Cups, which included stadium construction. There's no new stadiums being built for this World Cup, which should have reduced the environmental impact, but because of how many flights and how long these flights are, it's not actually going to make a difference, and it's going to be
and because
worse.
They increased the teams by like 30%. So there's so many more flights and more needs of personnel, food, facilities, like electricity. It's everything. It's just more, which makes it, to be fair, kind of suited to being back in the United States. It kind of fits our whole
more
vibe.
Is what we do,
Yeah. So in some ways it makes sense. Were you sure FIFA said their goal was to be carbon neutral, or was it to be car bomb neutral?
I think they've been car bomb neutral since the 90s. So
Okay.
that one,
that
I think
seems
they've
like
already
more
achieved.
of a FIFA take that they would put out there.
Yeah.
Today,
I
am car bomb
neutral.
neutral.
They could bring it back. They could bring it back. So if I'm not going to say it.
Do you think Infantino on Thursday is going to get up there in Mexico City at the press conference and say, "Today I feel what? Iranian. Today I feel, I feel
He's
Mexican.
List off all 48 countries at the World Cup.
Today I feel like a gay person at an Azteca game. Today."
Yes. Yeah, should we?
Today I feel like Ronaldo's rape victim. What are we talking? Yeah, I mean, too soon.
That part,
too soon. Am I wrong?
Because I think it was all alleged. I don't think there was a conviction, just to cover our bases so we don't get sued. Because imagine he has a legal team.
He just couldn't even come in the country for like 8 years. But no, it's chill. Yeah. He should be suspended for the first 2 games, but for some reason isn't. That's chill. That's fine.
Wait, why should he? Did I miss something?
Remember, because he got a red card in the Nations League game.
Oh, I forgot it. I
should have been banned 3 matches. They cut it down to 1 because they basically
Portugal.
Yeah, they colluded.
Portugal could just
Portugal would have no players.
If he would force all their red cards.
They essentially colluded so that he could play the first game of the World Cup. Whatever. Yeah. I'm not bitter. This is supposed to be the fun part. You want to shit on England again? Let's go ahead and shit on England.
Yeah, I mean, the other issue that people keep talking about, public transit, I think that is more of a real issue.
Oh, of course that's an issue, yeah.
Yeah, like, if we're going to host a World Cup, we should have made it more accessible via public transit. We know that people are coming from countries with actual public transit, and outside of certain cities that doesn't exist here, probably the 2 cities with the best public transit, DC and New York City itself, are not even really hosting sites.
Chicago's not a hosting.
Chicago's not hosting. That's another city with like actual public transit. The 2 cities that are hosting it that have real public transit are Boston and New York, and both their sites are super far away. You have to rely on an actual commuter train to get you out there. And they are jacking up the cost of the trains in connection with the World Cup events, which is outrageous.
Isn't it? It's because FIFA doesn't cover like the additional cost of like providing that stuff to fans. So then states are, in places where it's not super popular to heap sporting burdens on the taxpayers. Like, this is why Chicago doesn't have the World Cup, despite being the 3rd largest city and being a great soccer city full of a ton of immigrant populations that would be related to nations coming through the World Cup, and having a stadium that's actually better for soccer than football, which is what it's normally used for, and being downtown. Like, it's a perfect, and they just did an interview with Rahm Emanuel, who was the mayor for 8 years, that met how FIFA tried to bully him. And if you know anything about Rahm Emanuel, guys, like, he's not the guy you try to big boy. Like, he's very sensitive to that, and he was not pleased. And that's why Chicago doesn't have the World Cup. But now you're seeing the reasons why, like the jersey stuff. They're talking about how they have to hike up prices to cover their bases. I'm like, why didn't we consider this like 7 years ago when everybody was signing these agreements?
Yeah, well, 7 years ago, they basically lied to everybody that ticket prices would be in line as previous, that transit would be provided. Like, FIFA just said what they thought people wanted to hear. They promised ticket prices would be, I think they said it'd be like $21 to $330 for standard ticket packages out. So like excluding like the VIP stuff and, suites and things like that. But
that'll get you into a Pittsburgh Pirates game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not getting you into a World Cup game. San Francisco is supposedly one of the cheapest sites, and I went on this morning. It's $240 to get in,
and that's that's like 18 times cheaper than the original price is set. It's been coming down slowly because nobody's buying the fucking tickets.
Yeah, and we'll tie into why they're not buying tickets a little later as well, because there's more reasons than just the cost. But yeah, and just, I guess, to wrap up the things that are issues, quote unquote, with American hosting the World Cup that aren't actually issues. The people complaining about our chants is stupid. It's just, it's not a reason to not host a World Cup somewhere because they don't chant well. Like, it's just, it's just
well, what
like
bothers me about this whole thing is that it's like, it's as if all World Cups have been hosted in European nations with European, like, pure cultural elements. Like, did we not just have one in Brazil? Well, where there were kind of similar, there were logistical difficulties for different reasons, like less infrastructure, flying people out to the jungle, to Manaus, like everybody was bitching about that, but to be fair, but not in the same way. Or like in South Africa, which like, simply had to build a ton of stuff.
And we got introduced to vuvuzelas there, which...
Yeah, and people were mad about that, but that was...
I'm still a little mad about that. I hate the vuvuzela sound.
But it's a local cult, like it's their... Yeah. It was like their thing. Like, we're allowed to say, we believe that we will win. That's our thing. Yeah. That's allowed.
Yeah, you can... I think during U.S. games, if we chant that, you can make fun of us then. I think that's totally fair, right?
And also, can I just speak directly to camera Europeans for a second? Stop calling it the Mexican wave. Just call it the wave. There is no other types of wave. It's the same wave. It's just the wave. I know it was invented in Mexico at the 86 World Cup.
It wasn't.
Well, not invented. I know it was popularized internationally, is what I should say, at the 86 World Cup. Is there another? Is there an English wave? Is there an Italian wave? Is there a Congolese wave? I don't think so. It's just the wave. Just say the wave. Stop saying the Mexican wave. I'm done. Continue.
All right. Yeah. Also, if you want to see some like real American soccer, I'm going to say soccer because we're talking about America, soccer culture, watch some MLS and USL games, right? Some of those fan bases are incredible. LAFC is like a legitimately great fan base in the world scale, right? They have super passionate fans, and American fan bases, for the most part, take a lot of their cues from Latin American fans because immigration, that's a lot of the people who help popularize the sport here are Latin American immigrant communities. And it does tie into why the U.S. probably shouldn't be hosting the World Cup, because we're like refusing to allow that side of our soccer culture and people from Latin America come into the country and participate with us. And that's disgusting. But if you want to actually see like the positive sides of American soccer culture, watch some domestic games and just look at like the fans around there. NYCFC has a great fan base. Seattle has a great fan base, but they're also cringy as all heck. Like they are. How about Portland? I think Portland's pretty good. I think they're less offensive as Seattle.
And they have the coolest stadium in MLS. But Google the Tráfico derby and look at filling 100,000 people in the Rose Bowl to watch that.
Or the pregame stuff right outside of NYCFC Stadium in Queens. It's great. It's very Latin American coded, which I think a lot of Europeans don't expect with U.S. fans, and kind of see clips from some of the, for lack of a better term, white fan bases like Seattle, maybe like the Philadelphia Union, who have these like chant leaders that are just pretty cringe, right? But it's tied in a lot to our historic or college basketball stuff, and it's very different type of fandom than what you would see in Europe, which is I think is totally fair. Different places experience the sport differently.
It's the sport. Also, the point of the sport.
It kind of ties into the stadium thing. It's like the stadiums selected for the World Cup are boring. They're lame, right? But go look at some of the college football stadiums, some of the MLS stadiums. We do have some great stadiums in this country. They just unfortunately weren't selected because it won't make as much money, or they're in bad locations for it. Like most of the college ones are in small towns, but also still have like 80,000 person stadiums. It's insane. It's so weird that Tuscaloosa, Alabama has this massive stadium and just like nothing else around it.
They should have only Carolina. The host sites should have all been like small college towns across the country with big football stadiums.
It would have been great if they had like the hotels and stuff to pull it off. Yeah.
And I know SoFi in LA is like the fanciest, coolest new thing, and I'm sure it's gorgeous inside to watch a game. But could they have just hosted a couple games of the Rose Bowl again, at least to tie back to '94? The history there is so great. It's such a great soccer venue, even though it's a little unusual and a little janky now. Like, it's just, we're talking about heritage. That's heritage. That's
it's
American stadium heritage.
Non-baseball stadium in America.
Yeah, it's like our Wembley, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
the last final was there.
Yeah.
Oh,
for the pitches, since people have talked about that, outside of MetLife, it won't be a concern. All the stuff you're posting of is stuff that's not World Cup sites.
Not venue, yeah.
Hosting friendlies, which, separate
I have
issue.
questions about why they hosted all those friendlies in pitches that weren't like stable for. I mean, what if Harry Kane got hurt in Tampa? Like, what? Like, what? It would have been a disaster.
I don't know who schedules those or like chooses the sites or whatever. So I don't want to say something I don't know. But MetLife, famously terrible field by American standards.
Terrible stadium.
Yeah, terrible stadium, terrible field. The chances somebody gets injured playing at MetLife are astronomical. Feels like every single game that the NFL plays there's multiple people going down with knee injuries. So that one, we should be concerned about what happens at MetLife.
I still like them choosing that as the final just blew my mind when I assumed it was going to be LA the whole time because it's brand new, it's indoors, they have all the amenities. But at MetLife, I mean, and not to mention the transportation issues that have developed since that announcement. But like, and right now the NBA finals are happening in New York, and New York is already insane. I'm having a hard time picturing that as a finals destination, but whatever. Let's move on. Oh, the final thing I wanted to say on this is like about the judgment from anybody who's judging our soccer culture stuff is that how about the 2021 Euros where a bunch of England fans like burned down Wembley and part of London because they lost to Italy. Remember that? And they were kind of
a team that couldn't even qualify for the World Cup. So
we could make excuses for like, it wasn't everybody. It was, people were pent up and rageful coming out of COVID. There was like a lot of, cultural reasons, I think, or like just emotional, psychological reasons why people ended up happening. But like, let's just not, judge everybody as a monolith because, every country has a section of bad fans for the most part. Should we talk about the actual reasons in which we should not be hosting the World Cup? Those were all disqualifying reasons those are all reasons we should not be disqualified from hosting the World Cup. What we should be talking about is all the absolutely insane stuff that's never happened before, except maybe, I don't know, in fascist Italy. You'll have to tell me about in 1938 more. But
34, but yeah.
34. Where was 38?
France. And Italy still won, so they definitely
brought it was a little preview of what was going to happen a couple years later, right, in the war. The Italian takeover.
Yes, sure. Should we briefly just mention what's going on in Mexico before we get to the U.S.? Because Mexico has had their own issues as well. Biggest one is definitely the instability going on in Guadalajara, where there's been a lot of uprisings related to, I think it started with the death of a cartel leader and then political instability as cartels were trying to jostle for control in the area. It's impacted a lot of people who live there. And Guadalajara is one of the host sites, the capital of Jalisco, where this is all kind of centered around.
Beautiful city.
Mm-hmm. So there's definitely some concerns there, but it does seem that like it's mostly calmed down, that the
it was Mexican a few months ago. It's not a funny
some level of control in the region.
It's very much not a funny situation, but the one positive was that we got a lot of videos of American tourists in their hotels very, very confused about why they couldn't leave and go out on the street. And like Brits and
this region and is a massive tourist destination for Americans, Argentinians, Europeans, Asians.
There's a lot of confused white people,
South Korea as well,
not allowed to leave their hotels, and they're like, "What the hell is going on? Can't go to the beach."
And tequila is from the region as well. It's a really important region, actually, because tequila is a major export for Mexico. So, like, establishing control there.
What?
I know, shocking, right? Yeah. But yeah, it seems like a lot of
Casamigos?
that is kind of.
Is that what Casamigos is? Is that tequila?
You know Casamigos. You know what Casamigos is.
Casamigos is tequila. That's what everybody tells me.
But yeah, that's kind of the main thing happening with Mexico that's been cause for concern. So obviously, tourist numbers going to Guadalajara have been much lower than you would expect in a typical World Cup host city, but that is, I guess, less of a disqualifier because you can't predict that kind of thing happening the way you can with pretty much everything that the U.S. has done.
Well, we're talking about violence in Mexico. Why aren't we bringing up Vancouver? Horrifyingly dangerous city. Yeah, people running rampant with knives. Yeah. Well, as long as it's not after Game 7 of a Stanley Cup Finals, right?
Yes. I was going to say, or if there's a hockey game going on.
I've heard there are dinosaurs roaming Stanley Park. It's dangerous there, man. Maybe it's just the Raptors dino. I'm not sure. That's just what I've heard. I haven't been to Vancouver in a long time, so I couldn't tell you.
Yeah. Should we start with the main issue related to visas?
Indeed.
And the U.S.'s handling of visas, which...
Lawyer it up.
This is... Yeah. So this was an issue that everyone kind of expected with our current administration and their handling of... It's not just immigration. Like, people say it's an immigration issue. It's not just an immigration issue. It's a tourism issue and trying to prevent people from certain countries coming to our country for any reason whatsoever. Almost exclusively people of color, so people from Africa, Asia, and Central and South America. It started, like, the first notable instance of this was Breel Bolo on the Swiss national team having his visa denied really close to when he was about to go to the United States. I believe he was, like, preparing to leave. And
a man from the first world country. There is no country more first in the world than Switzerland.
So he was originally born in Cameroon, which I'm not saying that's the reason it was denied, but I think that is probably a contributing factor. He had apparently a previous conviction for what kind of sounded like a bar fight.
Yeah, knows nothing.
An assault charge that he is.
If that can ban you from getting in the country, then no wonder Harry Maguire didn't make the England team, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like the same thing that Harry Maguire did. It was kind of
not as bad, I don't think.
Yeah. Maybe more even fight would be a better way to describe it. But yeah, he has had his visa issues fixed, and he's you're not sure who Breel Bolo is, one of the people just tuning in. He is a pretty prominent striker from the Swiss national team that you would have expected to almost 100% be on the squad, barring injury. He's a pretty notable player for Monaco. Quite famous. He's been at previous World Cups. Since then, the main issues have related to Iraq and Iran, but it's not just them. Fans from Scotland and Morocco have reported having their visas changed from approved to revoked just days before their scheduled departure.
After they've booked everything in the country, flights, hotels, it's a ton of money invested. And by the way, money spent in our country. They've spent money. They've stimulated our economy by
willing to take the money, but we're not willing to take them. Yeah. Over 40% of visa applications from countries like Algeria, Ghana, Cape Verde, Uzbekistan, Haiti, and Ecuador have been just flat out rejected. And obviously, on an individual basis, some of these rejections might make sense. Maybe one of the people applying had a violent crime that disqualifies them from a U.S. visa. But over 40% shows it's an intentional, reaction to where these people are coming from.
It's a wildly high number.
Yeah. Right. If this was like, there's been a few people who had their visas rejected, that's one thing. The government has a right to say certain people who have done certain things in the past can't come in. But if you're just rejecting people because they're from a country, which if you're at 40%, that's what you're doing. That is you can't host a World Cup if you're going to do that. The term world is in the name of the competition. You need to be willing to take the world in to host it.
It's not how it works. Qatar is a different case in so many ways because, the way their version of hosting the World Cup was kind of position themselves ambassadorially. And so it wouldn't have really made sense for them and what they were trying to do to deny people and stuff. But, there was the stuff about the LGBTQ stuff and how welcoming they'd be, which was still super relevant. But there's also like all the intra-Middle Eastern conflict, which, you know, a country in their position may not X and X, you know, personnel. But even in that case, there were no instances of that. Even in Russia years prior, this was, you know, they hadn't invaded Ukraine mainland, but they'd already taken Crimea. So it was like there was already lots of stuff going on. Even in that case, there was nothing like this. Like, it just hasn't happened. And for it to happen here and now is, frankly, for two people like us, and I think most of the country, but especially people like us who are huge soccer fans, it's like fairly humiliating, because it's going to be and continue to be rightfully such a huge story. And it just looks bad on all of us, you know? And it just really sucks, because we've waited our whole lives to experience a World Cup here. And now it's just forever tainted by all these things. It's very, very frustrating and humiliating and sad. And
it's been predictable since this turn.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to continue to use the term regime, but since this current regime came into power in the United States.
Yeah, since he was reelected.
Yeah. And obviously, look, if you can't read between the lines, Max and I do not support our current political regime, but there's nothing, you know, we can do about it. We've made our bed, and the FIFA has clearly made their bed with this regime as well. Like, they're totally fine with all this happening. They have not put their foot down.
Well, they don't care.
Any issues, right? Except I think there was talk about potentially fully excluding Haiti at one point, and FIFA had to step in and say, you can't ban Haiti from coming. First of all, we host them for the Gold Cup like every 4 years.
They were here last year. They were here last summer.
The fact that was even talked about on some news sites as a potential option is outrageous. You know, if you're not going to be willing to host countries for the World Cup, and you're not going to be willing to host fans of those countries, then you shouldn't be hosting the World Cup. It's very simple. Obviously, what happened with the Scotland and Morocco fans is completely inexcusable. People having visas rejected just because of where they're from is completely inexcusable. But it's also been impacting teams, right? And referees. You mentioned the referee from Somalia, Omar Arfan, who was denied a visa. This is a man who refereed the African Champions League final. He's one of the
highest rated African referees. Yeah.
And arguably the world. I don't, obviously I haven't seen many of his games because I'm not routinely watching the African Champions League.
Highly rated official
held a lot of esteem, and
that makes the tournament worse too, just beyond the personal and, obviously all the racial stuff that brings up. That's awful. There is just the fact that it's hurting the tournament you're supposed to be like selling to the world. That in of itself is stupid. It's not none of it's really surprising to us, having lived here through the first administration and now this, as you say, regime. But it is a little bit, I don't know, it sort of reprovokes feelings. And there are moments during this past year and a half where like there's just so much noise and like stupidness with this that you can't really process all of it unless you're actively working in politics or humanitarian stuff or something in resistance. I think if you're just living an everyday life, at least for me, I find it hard to engage with all the stuff that comes up every day because the news cycles are so fast. They're constant. There's always something stupid or horrible or both happening. But then there are moments like what was going on in Minneapolis in January where you just like have to be an active participant of it again. And the World Cup is one of those things for me where like our worlds are colliding and like everyone else is getting kind of a look into what the daily lives are like. And it just, it provokes a lot of feelings that you can sometimes push down if you have something else going on in your life. And they're all just bubbling to the surface now. Yeah.
And obviously we're both white guys, so we benefit a lot from
Dutch people are white.
They count now since like the early 1700s. You guys have
when we took over England sneakily through the back door. When Willem of Orange was like, I'm king now.
You agreed to sell New York to England.
So,
I think.
But the thing is, once Willem became king of England through the back door, as I say, by marriage, England's like, oh, we hadn't been conquered for, well, I don't know. Is all of England Dutch because of that? You ever consider that?
It raises a good question. But anyway, back to my point, right? We are able to ignore a lot of what, because of the color of our skin, it doesn't impact us as directly as it does a lot of other American citizens. So, like, not to derail us into a full-on political, podcast, but I do
That's
think
what's been demanded of us. We have no choice. Yeah, they've foisted it upon us.
The overwhelmingness of all the stupid things that happen is intentional from this government as a way to tire people out so that you don't focus on the actual really, really, really harmful things they're doing, tearing people away. ICE, who have Marco Rubio, who's kind of leading ICE right now, has said they won't be in stadiums. That doesn't mean they won't be near stadiums. And 18 people have died in ICE custody this year. Which is
that we know of.
That we know of, yeah. Not to mention the whole quote-unquote alligator Alcatraz thing, where they kidnapped a bunch of people that they're saying are immigrants from Latin American countries that don't have a right to be here. Many of them were later found to be U.S. citizens. A lot of those people just disappeared. Like, there's no record of what's happened to them since they went there.
And it wasn't just It wasn't just Latin American people too. For Europe, there was like the Irish guy who was detained in one of these places for like 8 months, and just for no particular reason. Yeah,
they've shown they will not stop to confirm identity.
No, they don't care.
So particularly if you're someone from a Latin American country, like, you're at genuine risk of just walking around in the street and something happening to you, because they will be near stadiums. Like, that's 100% going to happen. They've said they will be in the area, but they won't be at stadiums. Who knows how honest they're being, because they've lied about a lot of things in the past. And
they have people who are untrained. And so, like, even if their actual policy, which I highly doubt, is to not interfere, like, it doesn't stop, a couple of idiots who aren't actually properly trained to be, wearing military gear and carrying weapons like that. Like, that's exactly what happened in Minneapolis. You have these guys who they got like 3 months of training. They can't fucking do a push-up or like pass a police test. But, they can go around like assaulting
in our country
citizens. Yeah, it is very low bar. It's very easy to be have you seen some of the policemen? Goodness.
Yeah. So it puts a lot of pressure on, like, the local authorities, who are not built to deal with hosting events like this and shouldn't be expected to do so, to police other police, which is not something that happens well in any country, because police stick up for one another. They have this bond, this thin blue line thing that they like to keep repeating, and it's very difficult to get police to respond to the actions of ICE because of that. The ICE presence is definitely something to be concerned about. It definitely adds another level of this, like, if we can't ensure that people are going to be safe, then why are we hosting the event? And
we've managed to create a space where we're actually a less safe place to host a World Cup than like Brazil or South Africa, which at the time people were like, oh God, is it going to, like, gangs or like whatever, like, or is it going to be safe to travel out of the country? And now we've created the ultimate, like, monster for this, and it's not because of the citizens. It's the
and we do have a high crime rate to begin with too. So,
well, sure,
but it's a big. If I didn't live here, I would not be traveling to this World Cup.
Well, you couldn't afford to. So
couldn't afford to, but two, because I wouldn't want to risk going to the United States. And
I get it.
Yeah, I do not blame fans who are just sticking at home or even not watching. Because we've already seen, players detained, team photographers detained, and we haven't even touched on Iran not being able to stay in the country that they're playing in is outrageous.
It's
never happened
like
before.
There's no words. Yeah, no words to really explain this.
Yeah, I didn't go back and look at where everyone stayed in Qatar, but I'm sure even if you stayed outside of Qatar itself, maybe, right? Like, I'm sure that could have happened because it's a small country.
On like one of those barges, because they didn't have enough hotels
to do so. Yeah, you weren't forced to stay outside the country. That was something that you could have opted to do.
You bring up the Qatar thing, and I wonder, like, you were not the first to talk about this, but is the World Cup, like, over? Is this it?
Probably. Like,
was started with Russia, Qatar, us in this Trump era, then we're going to have probably a little bit of reprieve in some ways when it's in Spain and Morocco.
No. Well, no, be a little also in Uruguay, which is
right.
outrageous. Like, I mean, it's
the only reason it's in Uruguay is because they had to remove all the barriers from Saudi Arabia getting it in 2034, so there could be no South American bidders, right? So, I'm a little bit of reprieve, as in it's in traditional football places, unlike the past 3. I mean, you could count us maybe now as, part of that community, but, it's in the traditional football areas. Spain and Morocco are at least like culturally linked, so that, and Portugal sort of on the side too. They're all sort of linked, and so that makes sense. But then, we kick off again in Saudi Arabia. We were just in the Middle East before. And then we've essentially exhausted all the continents, and who knows what happens after that. But the World Cup just might be over. It might have ended after Brazil 2014. I don't know. We might just not. It just might never be. We might never have the vibes that we used to. And I think watching the Euros a couple years ago was like hugely alleviating, even though I don't think it was actually that great of a tournament. Like it felt like a World Cup of old when people sort of congregated, and even like back to South Africa is a very prominent one in my memory. Smaller nations, everyone sort of getting along, and I don't know. I think that's just gone. I think it's over. Yeah,
it's always been used as a means for sports washing, right? Like,
of course, it's FIFA.
Obviously, we mentioned the second World Cup being hosted in a fascist country.
10 years ago, all of FIFA's officials were arrested.
Yeah, like,
so that's who we're working with.
The first World Cup was put on to say, look how much better South America is than you Europeans think it is, right? It was meant to be, for lack of a better term, a propaganda tool. But we have really allowed it to escalate and it's gone completely off the rails, right? Like, we are hosting it in a country that won't allow other countries into it that are participating. We hosted it in a country that used slave labor to build the stadiums. We hosted it in a country that was actively attempting to steal land from another major country that had a chance to be at that competition. It's definitely lost the plot in terms of what it should be for versus what it actually is.
Indeed. That's a pretty nice way to wrap it up, I think. Do you have any final thoughts? This very depressing episode of the podcast. It.
Yeah, we should talk more about the rattlesnakes. What if they get on the field, Max? What if they get on the field?
Ay.